All right, West Virginia fans, gonna change it up today. Usually, game week, I give you a preview of the upcoming game. But with the way the season's going, I wanted to switch it up a little bit. West Virginia and TCU have had a amazing series versus each other since both teams joined the Big 12. So in today's video, I want to break down the top moments of this series. We'll go through the box scores, we'll go through some highlights of these games, and I'll give my 2 cents because I want to highlight this because I think it's the most underrated series in the Big 12. So before we do that, if you are a West Virginia fan, please remember to like and subscribe to JerseyEER. We really appreciate it. It helps the show grow. With that being said, let's break down this series. So it all starts when in 2011 there was talks of TCU bolting the Mountain West and going to the Big East. It seemed like that was going to happen, and the Big East was going to gain this TCU brand, who was an up-and-coming brand from the Mountain West. And even though it geographically didn't make sense, it was definitely a nice add to the league. Soon after that, Pitt and Syracuse announced that they're bolting and they're going to the ACC. West Virginia at that point has a tough decision to make, and they ultimately decided to go to the Big 12. So does TCU. So TCU and West Virginia actually came to the Big 12 at the same time. So these two will forever be linked to each other because they were almost partners going into the Big 12. So that's an interesting thing to talk about too, is just how they have that in common, how they both joined the Big 12 in the same year after the losses of Missouri and Texas A&M. So let's talk about the first time these two teams played. It was an absolute amazing game. TCU edged this one out 39-38. You can see the quarterbacks there. Boykin, who was a young player at the time for TCU, Geno Smith for West Virginia, BJ Catalan, a nice running back for TCU. West Virginia's leading running back was Andrew Bowie. Our receiver, they had Boyce, and for us, we had Tavon Austin. So this one was a heartbreaking game. We're going to show the highlights in a second. I have no idea how West Virginia did not pull this one out. They had so many opportunities to win this game. It would have really changed the momentum of West Virginia's season. They lost 2 games in a row going into this one and could have really used a win, but unfortunately they fell in overtime. We're going to show that highlight now. So this is the 2012 highlights from the West Virginia TCU game. So here, Geno hits J.D. Woods. J.D. Woods with a nice grab here. J.D. Woods, such a good underrated player. Here, TCU runs this little fake, has a guy wide open over the seam for a touchdown. This is one of Tavon's electric runs. Goes from sideline to sideline here, and he's gone. Man, do we miss Tavon Austin for the Mountaineers. Carl Joseph actually makes a play here, and he's going to force a fumble. West Virginia has the ball in good field position, and then they're going to give it up to Sean Alston right here for a touchdown. And West Virginia had all the momentum here. And then the game, as you can see here, is tied 24-24. Tavon Austin takes this one to the house. And I have no idea after this happened how we did not win this game. On this play, Boykin goes up to the line, throws it, and they get like a 95-yard touchdown. I have no idea how no one caught that guy there, and he's off to the races. West Virginia had a chance to win the game in overtime. The field goal gets blocked. That's another chance they had to win in that game. And I just don't know how they didn't win this game. This is going to be a beautiful catch by Stedman Bailey here. Geno to Stedman over Verret from TCU, a nice corner. And that is in double overtime. So, it seems like we have a chance to win this game and pull it out. But TCU had other ideas for that. We're going to skip ahead a little bit. All right, so it's 38-31 here. Watch this double reverse pass TCU does here. And they're going to get in the end zone. And that's not the last trick that they have up their sleeve. They're going to roll out, hit the guy, and that's the 2-point conversion. And TCU was going home with the win that one. So like I said, I have no idea how West Virginia lost that one. I was a student at the time for that game, and that was just a heartbreaking loss for the West Virginia Mountaineers when that happened. And it kind of goes to show you what this rivalry was going to be like because it's been so close. All right, let's talk about 2013. So West Virginia takes their first trip to Fort Worth. This was not a good West Virginia football team. This is probably the worst team I've seen since this year's team. But they got the win here. They won 30-27, another overtime game. So the first two times that these teams played each other in the Big 12, it went to overtime. Clint Trickett was the quarterback for the Mountaineers. Um, Charles Sims and then DeKale Shorts were our playmakers. They had Catalan and Boykin and Paul Hall as the quarterback for TCU. So let's get into the highlights of this game. I forgot to put the score bug in this game, so you kind of have to just follow along and watch the highlights because I don't have the score bug in, so I apologize about that. So they start off here. It's actually picked off by Nick Kwiatkowski, a nice player for West Virginia. So that was cool to see. They get the field goal there, and they're up 3-0. Then TCU comes down here. Nice explosive play for them. And they settle for a field goal too, so it's 3-3. Nice pass here. Nice pass and catch there for TCU over Icky Banks was the defender on there, if you remember him. Play action, finds him over the middle, touchdown TCU. So they take out the early lead against West Virginia in this one. I actually love the black TCU uniforms and the white. The black on white is a good color combo here. Charles Sims, man. Oh man, we wasted his year. Charles Sims was so good coming over from Houston. One of my favorite running backs we've ever had at West Virginia. Speaking of Icky Banks, he gets the interception there. Icky Banks had a few big interceptions in his career as a West Virginia Mountaineer. Nice roll up by Trickett. Believes it goes to Cody Clay there for the touchdown. Nice sack here. This really changed the game here. Sack fumble. Absolutely changed the game for the Mountaineers. Trickett's going to dish it off. And Charles Sims is off to the races, finds the pylon, and touchdown. TCU making it interesting at the end. They tie it up. It goes to overtime. And then Josh Lambert with a game-winning kick. Josh Lambert, man, he one of the most clutch kickers we've ever had. Josh Lambert, he was so clutch in these situations, man. He had so many game-winning kicks. This one, the Maryland game, the Texas Tech game, he really was the real deal. I wonder whatever happened to Josh Lambert. If anyone knows whatever happened to Lambert, let me know because he got kicked off the team or left the team, and we never heard from him since. 2014, this one is another stinger for the West Virginia Mountaineers. So College Game Day actually came to this one. So I was in school for both college game days. One was against LSU. The second one, this was my senior year versus TCU. Another game where I don't know how West Virginia lost this one. They had a 2-score lead in the fourth quarter against TCU. TCU was a college football playoff contender this year. They were 7th in the country going into the game. West Virginia was 20th, and this really changed the momentum of West Virginia's season. If West Virginia wins this one, I think they have a totally different end of the season that they had. They found some confidence that season, and I really enjoyed watching this team play, but ultimately they fell short, and we're going to show the highlights of this one too. By the way, that play against Clint Trickett was not called a face mask, believe it or not. So this one definitely stung. It was Halloween weekend. I'll never forget this one. But let's get to the highlights of the 2014 game for West Virginia versus TCU. Actually, let me start this over. This started way late. All right, so they had a touchdown to Mario Offer to start off. TCU gets an explosive screen pass. He's off to the races, and he's gone. Read option play, and he's gonna get in there. Dreamus Smith, man, he had some flashes. He could really move for a bigger running back, and he punches it in there. This is where I don't know how we lost. You know, Terrell Chestnut trips him, goes for a touchdown. Morgantown, the stadium when that happened was going absolutely berserk when that happened. Trickett throws an interception that gets them back into the game, and he's off to the races. Trickett steps up, and he finds, I believe it was Merrill Alford there. Yeah, Alford. It was another nice play for West Virginia. And you can see, we're up here. We're up by 9 points. And then we just can never put TCU away. They have some big explosive plays, and they score a touchdown, and it's a dogfight. There was a blown coverage at the end of the game by Liston B there. A nice receiver for TCU. Boykin just, two of the clutcher games in Morgantown versus West Virginia. And then they make this kick, and the entire crowd just goes dead silent. Man, that was such a disappointing game for West Virginia. So we're going to have to get through a few of these negative highlights in the beginning of this, and then it'll get better for West Virginia. All right, so then we go back to 2017, and College Game Day is actually at this one too. But this time, this one's in Fort Worth. So uh, what this one's in Fort Worth, and TCU was 4-0 at the time going into the game. West Virginia was 3-1 going into the game. Their only loss leading up to that point was Virginia Tech, which was another great game. And West Virginia fell down early in this game, but battled back and made it a good game. And there was a very controversial call on David Sills. David Sills got it looked like the guy was holding him, and they called him for a push off, which was just a blown call, in my opinion. It was not the right call, and it cost West Virginia the game, in my opinion. So it's not on the highlight, but I wanted to point that out because this is one where it was one of the calls that completely changed the game. I hate watching games where the refs make a call in a terrible spot, like let the guys just play. And I'll never forget this game. So we'll get to this highlight again. It ends in a West Virginia loss, unfortunately, but it was a good game, and it did come down to the wire. So let's see the 2017 highlights. So our guy just gets mossed right here by the TCU wide receiver. It seems like TCU loves wearing black against us. I believe this is Jalen Rager for TCU. I think he was a freshman at that point. Greer's going to hook up with David Sills. We finally got the offense going in the third quarter of that game, and that's where we really saw us spark the offense there. So it's 17-17. TCU runs this trick play, and Gary Passon loved hitting us with the trick plays. And they're going to go in the end zone there for a touchdown. Greer finds David Sills again. That connection was deadly. Karan White also had a good game in this game, and then they scored the touchdown there. So that was a close game in 2017. Another tough loss for the West Virginia Mountaineers. So then we go to 2019, and we have a new coaching change. There's no more Dana Holgerson. It's now Neil Brown's team. And Neil Brown's team struggled that first year that they were there. Their offensive line was very young, and they didn't have a lot in the cupboard from all the seniors that graduated from Dana's last team. And this is before the portal was popping and was crazy in NIL. So you kind of had what you had. You could bring in some transfers as graduate transfers that could play right away, but otherwise you had to sit. So West Virginia was not a great team that year, and either was really TCU, but this game came down to the wire. There were some entertaining plays. You can see Max Duggan was a young quarterback for TCU at the time. This was one of Jarrett Dagy's first games as a West Virginia Mountaineer. 2 touchdowns and 3 picks, so the interceptions was definitely a problem for him, but he does make some decent throws in this game. Kennedy McCoy, 9 carries, 51 yards, and then Letty Brown was the leading receiver for West Virginia. And you can see there they had Jalen Rager, an NFL player, at receiver for TCU. So let's get to the highlights of this game in 2019. And again, this ends with a West Virginia win, which is a positive. So nice throw and catch there for TCU. Oh, actually, no, it was picked off by Tyke Smith, a guy that we absolutely hated to lose in the portal, man. When he went in the portal, that definitely hurt. And they're going to throw it there to Letty Brown. Letty Brown, a nice West Virginia career. Just an explosive run for TCU. He's off to the races. Actually gets stopped here by the kid from what's his name? Keith Washington made that tackle. So Keith Washington, the guy who actually transferred over from Michigan, they're going to run the Wildcat there and score a touchdown. 7-7 game here. And they're going to make it 10-7, so they get the lead there. It's 10-10 here. And the punt coverage is not great here. And he's off to the races for TCU. I mean, look at that. There's no one within 10 to 15 yards of him. That was a pretty explosive play there for TCU. West Virginia's hanging around though. It's 17-13 at this point, and we're building confidence and hanging around. This is Jarrett Doege's probably his best throw as a West Virginia Mountaineer to Isaiah Isdale for a touchdown. That's when I thought Doege was the real deal after he made that throw. And then TCU has a chance to come back in the game, and West Virginia stops them. They close that one out, and it's a nice win for Neil Brown. And even though it was their first year, to get that win was a good sign of things to come. Even though it wasn't things to come, if that makes sense. So we thought that was going to gain some momentum, but ultimately we know Neil Brown's fate. Maybe this year's team can do something similar with winning some games late in the season, because Neil Brown's team in November played decent. It was the best they've played all year. So maybe Rich Rod, their team can start doing that this week versus TCU. We'll see. But that was the 2019 game. 2022 was an interesting one. TCU made it to the college football playoff that year. They made it to the national championship. They had a nice win over Michigan in the semis, and then got absolutely boat raced in the final by Georgia. That was one of the most lopsided national championships I've ever seen. But they did a really nice job in conference play. And West Virginia, even though they were 3-4 going into that game, they hung around and made this a game. And JT Daniels, 275 yards passing for West Virginia. CJ Donaldson had one of his better games with 104 yards. He was a freshman that season. And then Sam James had 95 yards. And then you see again Max Duggan. This was a more veteran Max Duggan here with 341 yards passing, 3 touchdowns. You're going to see in the highlights, this was TCU's most explosive team that I've seen them have. I mean, they had Quentin Johnson at receiver. They were absolutely stacked at some of those positions. So let's show the highlights from the 22 game. All right, so CJ Donaldson, he's wearing the number 12 there. That's how you know it was his freshman year. Freshman CJ was really exciting to watch. I do miss CJ on the roster. Again, they're going to hit it with an explosive here, and they're off to the races there. This is when CJ's better runs. And this is where we could really see CJ shine against a really good TCU team. Max Duggan, I think he hits Quentin Johnson here. And we're not going to catch him. He's gone. There's two legit dudes for TCU. I mean, look how explosive TCU is here. He goes untouched, like 50 yards right up the middle. No one even touched him. I think this is Bryce Ford Wheaton here makes a really nice catch for West Virginia. Bryce Ford Wheaton was really good at those 50-50 balls. This is a nice throw from JT here. You're going to hit Johnson. And again, another one of those TCU explosive runs here. So TCU gets up by 10 here, and they're up by double digits, but West Virginia is still battling back. You're going to see on this next play, he's going to hit Reese Smith the way he can't believe he caught this ball. And then this is the end of the game. West Virginia is just trying to get one stop to close this thing out. This one really hurt. It was like a free play, and a lot of people lost money on this one because it was a backdoor. It was a bad cover. It was a bad beat because instead of losing by 3, West Virginia ended up losing by like 9 or 10 because it was like the last play of the game and TCU scored a touchdown. And I remember that one, but West Virginia battled that one, and that was a national runner-up. And West Virginia made that a game, and it was an exciting game in Morgantown. And even though they lost, I was proud of the effort that the Mountaineers had that day. And that leads us to the last game, which is the last time these two teams played in 2023. The last good team that we had, truthfully. This team won 9 games for West Virginia, and one of the reasons they won 9 games is because they got this one. They came up with 2 block kicks at the end of this game, which was exciting and huge for the West Virginia Mountaineers. You can see what Garrett Green did with 142 yards passing, 80 yards rushing. Don't pay attention to the receiver position next to his name. It's because he's in the NFL now. And then Hudson Clement was our leading receiver. So, and then they had Chandler Morris, who you're going to see in the highlights, had some really nice throws for TCU. So let's get into the highlights from the 2023 game, and then we'll get out of here and put this one to bed. So a nice explosive from Chandler Morris, and they're off to the races. West Virginia's not catching him, so West Virginia gets down early. Then we're battling back here. You know, Garrett Green showed his feet. It's too bad that we didn't have Garrett Green for at least 1 year in Rich Rod's offense. I think he would have been a really, really nice fit in Rich Rod's offense. And then again, TCU we were concerned about the defense, but they early in that game, and then they're going to give it to CJ. CJ was such a good running back down by the goal line for West Virginia. West Virginia also had a really good offensive line that season. Again, just another explosive play for TCU. They're heading to the end zone there. Read option. Garrett Green's going to take it in for a second tutty of the day. Nice throw here to Cole Taylor. And E.J. Horton with a nice catch. He got blasted on that play. Then here they're going to run a reverse play to Rodney Gallagher. Going to pick up some nice yardage here. So we take the lead 24-21, and those 3 points are going to be massively important because that's how the game ended. TCU goes for a kick. We block it with about 4 minutes left. And it's a close one. TCU's driving again here. They get a nice run off the edge, and you can see that they're nearly in field goal range. They get into field goal range, and this is how the game ends for the teams. The West Virginia gets a nice block here at the end of that game, and they're going home victorious for their 4th win of the season. So as you can see, when these teams play, fireworks happen. There's a lot of action that happens between these teams. And like I said, I think this was a good time to pause from the preview videos and just highlight this series. Some people might call it a rivalry, some might not, because TCU has a lot of rivalries in Texas and West Virginia has a lot of East Coast rivalries. But, you know, I think it's important to highlight the series between these two teams because it is a solid series. And most of the time that the teams play, it is competitive. And West Virginia actually leads the series 8-5 going into this one. So who knows what we'll see what happens on Saturday. Not too confident, if I'm being honest, just from what we've seen. And I think TCU definitely has the talent advantage in this one, but that's why they play the games. Who knows? Maybe West Virginia can show us something for the Coal Rush at home. Either way, we'll break it down after the game is over. And that's it. So I appreciate you guys. We'll talk to you guys next time on JerseyEER.